Shannon Webster, Applicant Info, slide number 24. Since there's only one application now, if a transit agency submits for both operations and mobility management, where should the mobility manager be listed in the contacts if they are not the one submitting the application, program or administrative? Yeah, that's a good question, Shannon. We might have to brainstorm that one a little bit. We might have to add a section. Sorry. We might have to add a section for that, for a separate mobility management contact. Okay. Elaine, what types of policies and procedures do you need? Okay, one moment. I can pull that list up. I'm not that good. I don't have that memorized. So I will pull that up and read that off to you. While that's loading, I'll move on to the next question. Janice, what are some examples of good projects that can be requested? If our LOI listed new vehicles, can we apply for other good projects? So when I was referencing good projects, what I meant by that was projects that score above a certain threshold. So there's no one project type that is better than another. It just means like, okay, we had all these requests in, we had projects above this threshold for scoring. All those are good projects that we want to fund if possible. So that's what I mean by that. Again, if you can only apply for what you were accepted for through the LOI or through additional communication with our office after this webinar. If you have more projects you want to apply for based on the information you learned today. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I am pulling up this question to address Elaine's, or this form to address Elaine's question. Sean Gress, just for clarification's sake, it is not acceptable to apply for more than what was included in the letter of intent, but is permitted to apply for less than initially requested in the LOI. Yes. So if you were playing it safe through the LOI and submitted project information for projects you weren't quite sure you'd actually apply for, but just wanted to be deemed eligible for in case, you do not have to apply for all of them. You can, but it kind of is your ceiling of what you can apply for. Okay, Elaine, so you asked the question for what types of policies and procedures. So the other thing about this field in the application is it's a check all that apply. So if you don't have all of them, you know, that you don't have to select them all to be able to submit your application. But what we ask about in the application is an ADA policy, a Title VI policy, financial policies, passenger assistance training / drive training, reasonable suspicion policies and training. Reasonable suspicion will not apply to people who do not operate public transit systems. Bloodborne pathogen training and procedures, first aid CPR training requirements, preventive maintenance plans, facility maintenance plans. So again, facility maintenance plan won't apply to anyone who doesn't have a federally funded facility. But those are some examples of the types of policies and procedures that we check in on to see if you have them implemented at your agency. So if you go through there and check everything off, then when it comes time to get you integrated into the Black Hat important documents module, those are what we will expect you to be able to upload there for our review. Dominique, question on local match source. Can that be that source be our organization budgeted funds? Yes. So really the only limitation to local match source eligibility is if you are receiving federal FTA funds, you cannot use other DOT funds to match it. So that's like US DOT. So there's like 8 arms under there. You know, you have the rail, aviation, federal highway, Federal Transit Administration. You know, there's several administering agencies that are under the US DOT, and basically you just can't use any funds from them to match FTA dollars. But majority of you probably aren't going to run into those funds from those organizations. But for example, as Tina mentioned earlier, RTC is her organization, and they tend to receive funding from multiple ODOT FTA programs. So Section 5310, Section 5311, they are both programs administered by FTA. Tina couldn't use her grant funds she gets from 5311 to match her grant funds in 5310, right? Both of those programs are administered by FTA, and they can't match each other. So that's kind of an example that someone might run into when they're looking at local match source. But organization funds are absolutely eligible. Kim, my board meets quarterly. They met earlier this week and approved last year's version of the authorizing resolution. Will this be okay as we are only applying for the same funding as last year? Yeah, Kim, so it really just depends. When you said they approved the authorization from last year, you know, did they actually sign and date it from this year? Or is it like, hey, that looks good, we're not going to re-sign it? You know, if it's an outdated signature from like 2021, we wouldn't accept it. But if it was authorized a couple weeks ago and they signed and dated it from a couple weeks ago, that would be acceptable. Tim, it's a long question, 1 second. In a previous webinar update regarding the project-based single application process, ODOT mentioned looking to start funding mobility management projects out of 5311, especially if a 5311 system and mobility management project were housed in the same agency. Assuming this is the case, 1, would the local match requirement for mobility management projects funded under 5311 increase to 50%? To answer that question, no. Mobility management is an 80-20 match. 2, if an agency has historically been awarded 5310 for mobility management projects, how much notice would be given to the agency if the local match requirement would increase due to the program used to fund the mobility management project? The local match will not increase, so not applicable for the second. Mobility management, regardless of if it's 5310 or 5311, will be an 80-20 project. When do we get access to FormStack again? So we will be emailing out the link to the FormStack application and the password ahead of March 28th. Michael, if I said that I was going to apply for funding for 2 replacement vehicles, can I apply for only 1 vehicle instead? Yes. Karen, is Lorain County considered rural, urban, or small urban? Lorain County is considered small urban. If our organization's policies are already uploaded in Black Cat from last application cycle, do they need uploaded again? Mary. She has left, so I will obviously have that in the FAQ. But no, they don't have to be re-uploaded, but you should check to make sure that they are the most recent version is uploaded. So if you've made any changes to documents since you uploaded them last year, then just upload the most recent version. Alberta, will we be able to revisit this presentation? Yes, this presentation is being recorded so you can access it at any time. And we will also be providing the PowerPoint presentation. Tom, so no longer send questions directly to Kira. That is correct. If it's questions related to the program year 2023 application cycle, if you have an active project that you are currently implementing for calendar year 2022, or you are closing out a 2021 project, you will still interact with Kiera. She is the program coordinator for 5310 funded projects, but you do not know technically what program is going to be funding your projects for 2023. So you don't really have an assigned program coordinator for your 2023 requests. So that's why you will send questions to the generic inbox. Oh no. I lost my spot. Okay, Robin, would this be the time to add counties to our service area for mobility management? Yeah, if you are looking to expand a project, you can absolutely request funds to do that through this application process. Tom, so 80/20 is now one request with match and ODOT funds as far as we will know. I am not quite sure what you are asking. But when it comes to the federal, or sorry, when it comes to the funding requests, you will be asked to indicate how much ODOT assistance you need, how much local money you're contributing, and then what the total, and then the form will automatically calculate the total project cost based on what you enter in those two fields. So if you're providing 20% local match, then you would just put that, you would put the 20% in the local line, and then you would put the 80% in the ODOT line if you're just strictly requesting just that 80% match for your project. And I will say, because state funding is limited, having the full match needed for your project greatly increases your chances of being funded. If your project, if you cannot provide match to your project, we might not be able to fund it. You know, we might not be able to come up with all the funds needed for the project. So that's just something to remember. If you have the local funds for the project, definitely indicate that because that is definitely going to increase your odds. So Tom, if that didn't answer your question, please clarify, and I'm happy to attempt to answer it again. Karen, our fleet is headquartered in Seneca County, but they serve Seneca, Erie, Huron, Sandusky, and Lorain County. The vehicles that serve Lorain will be parked in Lorain. If Lorain is not rural, we will need to apply separately, like the Bittersweet example. Should we base these requests on where the fleet is headquarters, counties they're serving, or the counties in which they're parked? Okay, good question. So you're going to base the applications on what counties the projects are serving. So if you are requesting projects that will serve Lorain County, that would be a separate application than your projects that would serve Seneca, Erie, Huron, and Sandusky. But if the vehicles are just parked in Lorain but not operating in Lorain, or operating in the other four, then that wouldn't be a separate application, if that makes sense. Kelly Hunter, what about Scioto County, urban or rural? Scioto County is rural. Shannon, if you decide to add contact to the section, can you make sure they also receive follow-up emails about LOI application, etc., in addition to person who submitted? Yes, we can have multiple notification emails established. Kathy, does the federal requirement of a $15 minimum wage apply to these grants? No. I don't think so. I might actually have to look into that.